This is Anansi, a tricky spider from African folklore. He's known for his smarts, cunning, and skill as a trickster, and he uses his wits to outsmart other characters. His story has impacted not just Africa, but the entire world, and we'll tell you that story in just a second. But first, let's get to know Anansi. He's well known among the Ashanti people of Ghana, and Anansi's origins can be traced back to Akan folklore. In the oral storytelling of West Africa, the stories of this spider were passed down through generations, and he became a symbol of storytelling and wisdom. But he's more than just a clever trickster. He can be both a hero and a villain. He can pursue the greater good, while also pursuing his own selfish interests. As with many folk tales, his story carries moral lessons and themes such as the importance of intelligence and creativity and the consequences of greed. And when slaves were brought to America from West Africa, they brought these stories of Ansasi with them. So the Ansasi tales got integrated into Caribbean folklore, where he's sometimes known as Anansi or Brer Ansansi. Over the years, he's risen to cultural icon status and is a symbol of slave resistance and resilience. Outsmarting more powerful opponents resonated with African slaves, who found hope and inspiration from the stories of Anansi. So let's get into it. Let me tell you the story of Anansi and the magic stick, and you can see what taught generations of West Africa about greed and wit, and what gave hope to thousands of African slaves. Our tale begins with Anansi the spider. He's known for his cleverness and cunning, but is also notoriously lazy. One day, while walking through the village, Anansi sees a farmer using a magic stick to do his work. The farmer commands the stick, and the stick does the work for him. Being the lazy spitter he was, Anansi wants to have the stick at all costs to avoid doing his own work and chores. And somehow, he actually gets a hold of the farmer's stick. The magic stick starts to do all of Anansi's household work, like cleaning, cooking, and fetching water. Anansi took advantage of the extra time he had to rest and indulge in any leisurely activity he wanted. He felt proud of himself, and at first, life seemed great. But his joy didn't last long. Because Anansi was so eager to use the magic stick, he never learned how to stop it. Once the stick started on a task, it would work, and work relentlessly. After finishing Anansi's chores, the stick moved on to other tasks, and it caused complete chaos. It chopped too much wood, overflowed water from pots, and wreaked havoc throughout Anansi's house. But it didn't stop there. Soon, the whole village was in an uproar because of the stick's non-stop work. Anansi tried desperately to make it stop, but to no avail. The whole village was angry at Anansi, and he realized the situation was out of his control. With no other options, he went back to the same farmer who had the stick in the beginning. Or in some versions of the story, he goes to a wise figure in the village, or even a deity. Somehow he learns how to stop the magic stick. He must say a command to the stick after admitting his own laziness and deceit. Anansi rushes back to the village and says the command, and finally, the stick stops working. The story ends with Anansi reflecting on his actions. He learned a valuable lesson about responsibility, the importance of hard work, and the danger of wanting the easy way out. As for the villagers, even though they were angry, they forgave Anansi and recognized that he had learned his lesson. The story serves as a way to teach its listeners about hard work, honesty, and respecting and understanding the tools or powers one uses. These Anansi stories had huge cultural significance in West African and diaspora communities. Let me explain just how much the stories of this spider have impacted the world. They were a key part of the oral tradition in West Africa, especially among the Akan people of Ghana. These stories serve as a living link to the past and play a major role in preserving the history, moral values, and cultural practices of these communities. Anansi was keeping the heritage and wisdom of their ancestors alive. He also taught moral lessons. Since he was a trickster, Anansi educated both children and adults about virtues like wisdom, ingenuity, and resourcefulness, as well as the consequences of greed, pride, and deceit. Through his adventures, people learned about how complex human nature and social interactions can be. Anansi's cleverness in overcoming a stronger adversary mirrored the slaves' own struggles against oppression. And his ability to outwit his enemies offered them hope and a sense of psychological resistance for slaves who were far from home. The stories reached the Caribbean, and Anansi's adventures evolved to reflect the new realities and cultures of enslaved Africans. And in addition to being a symbol of resilience, Anansi became one of adaptability as well for African culture, in the face of displacement and hardship. Traditionally, Telling Anansi stories is a communal activity, often told at large gatherings and a means of social bonding. Sure, these stories were entertaining, but they also fostered community and a shared cultural identity among its listeners. In fact, the widespread popularity of Anansi has facilitated a cultural exchange between Africa and the rest of the world. These stories have influenced art, literature, and folklore in multiple other cultures. And finally, Anansi represents the duality of human nature, which could be a reason why it resonates with so many. The spider portrays both admirable and questionable traits, and his character encourages listeners to reflect on their own actions and decisions. At its core, it's a story about a trickster spider who gets a little too greedy, but over time, it's become much more than a story. Anansi's tales are a vessel of culture, of wisdom, and of history. They offer insight into human nature and continue to be relevant today, showing just how adaptable and resilient the human spirit can be.